Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Mobility Fit with me, Jackie. We've got quite a bit to go through today, so we're going to crack on with it. I'm going to tell you what we're doing over the next two episodes though, because I've decided to do something a little bit different. So today's episode is going to be aimed at runners. Now wait, before you go and click off this video because you do lifting or you do football or you do dance or some other sport that's not running, wait, before you do that, let me try and convert you to actually staying and doing it as well, because the next two episodes, even though they're going to be specific, this is for runners and the other one I've tried to aim a little bit more towards lifters, you can still do it. There are still going to be areas on your body that you're going to find tight or little niggly issues with, whether you are a runner, whether you are a lifter, whether you do a sport like football or basketball or dance or yoga. All of those things would still be relevant for you to stay with me today and do this video. Equally, if you don't, I won't take offence. It's not a problem. But yeah, so this one is going to be aimed a little bit more towards runners. So with that, it means that we're going to be doing a lot more towards the calf region here, because if any of you guys are like me, this is rock solid anyway. Doesn't really help with my lifting and definitely doesn't help when we go into lockdowns and you end up not being able to go to the gym and therefore end up running and making this situation a little bit worse. So that's what we're aiming to do today. I'm going to talk you through the equipment that we're going to need. You'll be pleased to know that the lists are not as long as they've been previously. So you do need our trusty blocks, or as you know, books, like chunky textbooks, whatever works for you, you need two of those. You also need, for those of you with sensitive joints, like I sometimes have if you've got knobbly knees, you might need yourself a cushion. This is our throw from the sofa, little blanket, a jumper, anything to just put underneath your knee to protect it, because we are going to be pushing down through your knee a little bit and balancing on this joint. So if they're a bit sensitive, grab one of these. Now you will also need a foam roller, shock horror. If you don't have one, don't worry, I do have an alternative and it's not that ball, something different this time. So I had really tight calves and I still do, and using one of these on a semi-regular basis really did help. So if you have got a foam roller for your own one, use one of those today please. If you don't though, and you still want to have a go at those exercises, what you could do is you could use an alternative as a broom. I would think that most people have one of these lying around in their house or student flat, so you can grab one of these, especially if you've got some blocks that you can prop it up against to use. Don't worry if you're looking at me right now being like, how on earth are you going to use that instead of this? I will show you and then you will see what I'm talking about. But that is your list of equipment for today. All right, so let's get going. So we are going to start off with doing some foam rolling of your calves. So before diving straight into using this, I'm just going to demonstrate how you can set up using the broom to use this as an alternative. Now there are two variations and ways that you can do this. So you can either use the broom, and all you're going to do, I'll come on my side so you can see, is you're going to pop it on the back of your legs there. And all you're going to do is start at the, not right at the bottom, because this here is your tendon. It's very, very thick and fibrous. You don't necessarily want to be on that. So a little bit further up, you're kind of looking like a quarter of the way up the back of your shins. And then hold that broom there. And then you're going to sit back down on it. And you can give the broom a little bit of a twist from side to side. And then move the broom up. Then you're starting to come onto the bulk of the muscle of your calves. And that's when you're going to start to feel that a little bit more, and especially, see, it does work, especially as you get to the top of that movement where, yes, that is quite painful. I apologise in advance if you're doing this with me, because yeah, this isn't that nice. But equally, if you're going to use a foam roller, we're going to be going through the same thing. So if you're going to use the broom that way, I want you to go ahead and do that. Your alternative method is you're going to grab your blocks or textbooks, and I'm just thinking the best way to show you this. So then what you're going to do, prop them in front of you, a little bit off the ground so that you've got space. You're then going to put your broom on top so that it's balanced, ideally, let's hope, there. And then you're going to pop one leg on. I think I've left myself enough space. And then from there, you can do some rotations with your ankle, which is going to help to get into there. You can also, if that's not enough, you crazy fools, can put another foot on top, which really, really will get into that muscle a lot more, and is very, very uncomfortable, but will be beneficial later down the line. So if you don't have a foam roller, that is your option to do that. So whichever one of those of the broom ones, go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, you are going to grab your foam roller and join me in using that for releasing some tension on your calves. So with that foam roller, we're going to do one leg at a time. So let's start with your left leg. So you're going to pop your left leg on there, and right leg can just be off to the side. You lift yourself up into your arm slightly, and all I want you to start off with is just rolling backwards and forwards. But remember, if you watch the episode that we did about quads, I think it was, we're not going up and down as fast as we can. We're trying to really work through those different segments of tissue and those different layers. And as I said, the slower you go, the deeper you will actually get into the tissue. So you want to try and go at a consistent moving pace, but slowly, if that makes sense. And then to increase that, you can then again, like we spoke about before, you can pop your right leg on top of your left, lift up, and ooh, yeah, you can tell I went running yesterday. Yep, definitely. And then when you find a little sore bit, like I've got here, I then want you to do some rotations of that bottom ankle, which will be your left ankle. And you can even see that in a way, it really doesn't like that bottom range because it starts to jud a little bit. And then you can go the opposite direction. And then coming back onto the floor. And then going back into the slow back and forth movements. Now this is also in a way, if you've not used a foam roller before, and a lot have been in this position, because obviously when we did your quads, you were just resting your body weight on your forearms, which is a much bigger surface area than just using your hands. So you may get some shaky triceps from keeping yourself up. Your wrists might also start to ache a little bit. That's completely fine. If you need to, shake your arms out, pop your leg back on, go again, okay? Don't end up straining your wrist by trying to keep yourself up the whole period of time. And then we're going to swap over onto the other side. So right leg. So again, starting off with your left leg down, and we're just going nice and controlled, not zipping up and down on that foam roller, going through the whole range of the back of that shin. Obviously not going onto the knee joint, not going that far. That would be a very silly thing to do. And then increasing it if needs be, and bringing the left leg on top. Why I chose to do that, you can probably tell by my face. It's not the most enjoyable. And back and forth. Again, when you find that sweet spot, and by sweet, I mean sore spot, you're then going to add those little rotations through that ankle joint, round the other way. So if you were going clockwise, you're now going to go anti-clockwise, lifting yourself down, and then going through a little bit more through that foam roller action, and slowly bring yourself off. Now, you can do that for a longer period of time. If you want to do that for longer than we've done, feel free to do so. There's no specific timings. The only thing that I would say, and this might not necessarily correlate to right here, right now when this video gets released, foam rolling your calves before you go. I know this is for runners, I'm sorry I'm going off on one, but just bear this in mind too. If you're a lifter and you're doing this, this is just for you. If you were going to go into your back squats back in the gym, doing a little bit of calf foam rolling at the beginning, great, but don't sit for too long on it. A little bit, great, but don't go in it so that your calves are too loose, because you want to keep a little bit of that tightness and sort of like reband coil that you'll get with your muscles. So foam rolling is great, especially at the end of a workout. You can do it before, but maybe don't do it forever and a day. Probably in the same way if you were a runner. Like, I don't think anyone would jump on a foam roller before they went for a run. But even if you did, don't do it forever. You can spend a bit longer when you come back after you finished your run. Okay, so that is your foam roller, or you have done this with the broom. So exactly the same thing that we just did then, except you were using your broom instead. Okay, so that has just kind of worked into the soft tissue a little bit more. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do what are called CARs, which stands for Controlled Articulated Rotations. So we're going to work with the joint this time being your ankles, and trying to get as much range of movement in the planes of movement that it does anyway. Okay, so we're going to sit slightly on the side because then hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit better. We're going to do one leg at a time. So I want you to start with taking your, let me think about this. So you're going to take your left arm, right arm is going to come underneath and hold that joint up. And you're going to hold on to your arm on this side. This other arm is just going to hold on to this leg here. Now the reason for that is so that your arm can dangle free. So if you want to sit in this position, you can do. I would rather push my elbow against my opposite leg. So once you're in this position here, means that this ankle can dangle free. It's not supported on the ground, it's just doing its own thing. So from here we can now work on, all I want you to do to start with is you're working on what we call plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. So plantar flexion, I remember as P for pointing your toes, and dorsiflexion is bringing your toes up towards your shin, which is an area that I very much struggle in. I do not have the best of range in my ankles anyway. So what we're doing here is we're just going up and down, but we're not doing it as fast as we can, up and down, up and down, up and down. I want you to have some control in that movement. So you're going to really try and pull those toes up as high as you can. Unfortunately, that is as high as I can. And then you're going to push them away, again, slow and controlled, hence the car name, and then repeat that. So we're just bringing it up and then pushing it back down again. So you're really just trying to reach that end range point that your ankle will allow in this movement. Now, your ankles do have a little bit more rotation side to side as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draw circles with our toes. So you really want to think about taking your toes in the biggest and widest circle possible. Again, if you were to go around like this really fast, chances are you're actually making quite a small circle. What I want you to do is a slow controlled movement and really reach as far wide as you can with that circle. So let's start by pulling our toes up nice and high, and then you're going to start by taking your ankle in a clockwise direction. So to the right hand side first, and then you're going to end up as far as you can plantar flexed with your foot all the way down pointing, and then we're going to start to bring the ankle back up all the way to the top. Now you may find that you've got areas that feel really sticky in this position. It just means that you're really reaching that end of range. There's nothing wrong with it in particular. If it feels a little bit gristly, I can tell you from my own experience, it may well be that previous years you actually had an injury to said ankle, and there could just be a little bit of a gristly feel due to what happened with your ankle at that point, because I have plenty of experience in that. And now we're going to go in the opposite direction. So rather than going clockwise, we're going to go anti-clockwise. So taking the toes out to your left hand side, really pulling them down, pointing all the way through and bringing them up to the top. So we're back at that dorsiflexion, and let's go again. Round, stretching through, down now at plantar flexion, bringing them round in that circle all the way up to the top. Cool. So that's one foot, but we have 2 feet. So let's do the other side. So this time, left leg. So I'm just going to shimmy so again, hopefully you can see a bit better. Left leg, left arm underneath to lift your leg up. Right arm coming on top just to clasp around your knee joint, just so you're making sure that you're not doing any movement from the knee joint. If this is clasped here, you know that you're just working your ankle joint. So let's start off with the same as we did before. So you're going to do some dorsiflexion, so bringing the toes up as high as you can, and plantar flexion, really pointing them down as far as you can. And we're just going to do that a couple of times. So some of you might have a great range of movement, which I would be very jealous of, because like I said, ankle joints, not my best joint, should we say. And we'll just do a couple more. So really bring that toes all the way up as high as you can to your shin. I promise this is as high as I can go. And then pushing down to the floor. One final one, really reach those toes up and then pushing them down. Okay, so now we're going to go into the articulations that we did before. So starting in dorsiflexion, and again, we're going to go clockwise first. So we're going to turn to the right hand side with our toes. So up nice and high with those toes, and then really take them nice and wide, really getting through that whole range of movement available at that ankle joint. Now, again, you might have variations between your ankles. So you may have one that feels a little bit smoother. You feel like you can probably go a little bit wider. I think I can get a little bit wider with this one. But as I said, this could have an impact due to previous injuries and histories of the joint. So my right ankle, I've broken twice. So I can't move it around as well. Whereas my left, I thankfully and hopefully will not have that happen on my left hand side, but I am very clumsy. And then we're going to swap, so we're now going anti-clockwise. So again, really just kind of listen for that feedback that you're going to get through that joint. Does it feel gritty? Does it click? Does it feel really smooth? Like, you can work out where your restricted areas are by how this feels as you're going round. Okay, and relaxing down. Okay, so we've done some foam rolling, we've done some articulations. Now we're going to get on with a bit more of some stretches and some movement. So the first thing we're going to do is a toe stretch. This might also be called a plantar flex stretch. Can't quite remember. So for this, what we're going to do is you're going to come into an all fours position, and then you're going to tuck your toes underneath you. Now you want to make sure that even your little baby toes are tucked underneath, because what you're then going to do is we're going to come and we're going to sit back. Now I would actually bring your knees together and bring your feet a little bit closer. And then we're just going to sit back on our heels. I'm going to move slightly further forward because I'm not sure whether I'm actually in shot. There we go. So we are just sitting on our toes. Now this, after a little bit of time, don't worry, we're not going to spend too long here. This is kind of stretching out your toes, because if you think about your foot spends most of the day like this, which means your toes spend most of the day in this position. What we're trying to do is we're really trying to stretch those metatarsals underneath and the connecting tissue there, because if you're a runner, you really want that push from your toes, don't you, to be able to propel you to go further forward. And the chances are, especially if you do a lot of running, this will probably be quite tight. So if we can release this off a little bit to give you a bit more of that spring mechanism as you're pushing off your foot to move further forward, then this is obviously going to be a good thing. You should by now be starting to feel a little bit of an ache in those toes. We're just going to hold it for a few more seconds and then we will release it. Obviously, if sitting right back, so your force is directly over your toes, if this is too much, you can of course lean yourself further forward, because then the centre of your gravity is not directly on your toes, so it won't be as painful, ideally. Okay, bring yourself out, slowly lower yourself out, and I would slowly release those toes and then just give them a little bit of a tap on the mat, just to kind of bring them back to a normal position. So we're now going to move on to a similar sort of movement, but rather than for your toes, this is going to be more like for your tib anterior, which is at the front of your shin. So you have your tib posterior at the back, which people might have heard of, whereas your tib anterior people tend to forget about, and that's at the front. And that can get very stiff from repetitive, obviously lifting of your foot as you drive through. So you're going to bring your feet underneath you, so you're sat on your toes. Now the only people that this might be really difficult for is people who have restrictions in their knee joint or slightly dodgy knees and find it very difficult to sit back completely on your knees. In which case, obviously give this a little bit of a go, but if it's too much for you and you can't do it and this is really painful, please don't do it. Just listen to your body. But for those of you who can, you're going to sit back, and then what we're going to aim to try and do is you're going to lean back and lift up your knees. So we're stretching out the tib ant and just in a way actually forcing that ankle joint into plantar flexion. So if you struggle to really point those toes, this actually might help you as well. So again, we're just going to sit here and hold this. Also, if anyone's got any ankle injuries or restrictions throughout all of this that we're doing, or any exercise, let's be honest, that we're going to be doing today or in any of my videos, just listen to your body. If it doesn't feel right and it's really unbearably painful, you probably shouldn't be doing it, and it's maybe a little bit too advanced for where you're at the moment. But do also remember, sometimes a little bit of discomfort can be beneficial in the long run. So if it's only a little bit of an ache, chances are it's just that you're stiff in that area, or if you've had an injury to that joint, maybe your tendons are a little bit tight, or ligaments, that's all. Okay, and slowly bringing the legs back down. Good. All right, so we've got, let me have a look at my little board. We have 2 more calves, and then we're going to move on to a different area. So you've got your calf press. So you're going to come into a all fours position, and then from here what I'd like you to do is you're going to take your left leg back and you're going to keep your toes on the mat, and you're going to push back through your hands so that your heel is being forced back. So this should give you a nice little stretch all the way down the back of your leg, so back of your calf muscles. So holding that there, so you're driving, forcing back through your arms. Obviously your back is ideally nice and flat, there's no reason for you to be in this position, and just hold that there. And then slowly bringing this foot back, swapping over onto the other side. So exactly the same thing, but this time you're going to step back with your right leg, and then you're going to push back again through your hands so that you can feel that down through your right calf muscles. Three, 2, 1, and slowly bringing yourself back again. Okay, the next one that we're going to do involves us in a standing position, so I will be back. So the next bit we're going to be doing in a standing position, but I've moved my tripod with my camera as far as I can away from me, and I'm still out of shot. So my face is going to be out of shot, but I'm still going to be telling you what you're doing. So what you need to do is, this is where you need your blocks or your textbooks. I even needed to get another block for this one. Or if you have steps at home, this would also be absolutely fine to do on a doorstep, to be doing on your main steps between areas in your house. Absolutely fine. If you don't have steps and you live within a flat, then that's when you can use the blocks, just to give you a little bit of height off the floor. Okay, so one last thing to mention. We're going to go through 2 different positions. It's the same movement, except the variation is going to be, one's going to be with your knee bent, one's going to be with your knee straight. little insider as to why. The only difference is everyone thinks that you have one calf muscle. You don't. You have two main ones. You've got your gastrocnemius and you've got your soleus. But your gastrocnemius attaches at the top, or around your knee joint, whereas your soleus attaches underneath. So if you're stretching with a straight leg, you're stretching your soleus and your gastrocnemius. But if you're stretching, still can't say that word, with a bent knee, it means that you're not working the gastrocnemius anymore, you're solely working on your soleus. That was a really bad joke. Anyway, let's go to the wall. So, find yourself at the stairs or the wall. You're going to take your left leg, just your left leg, and come up to stand so that your heel is dropping off ever so slightly. Now from this position, because your leg is straight and you've got your knee locked out, you're stretching a little bit of your soleus, but also your gastrocnemius is going to be taking over. So what we're going to do is going to work between this movement and when we bend it, now we're not stretching gastrocnemius, but we're stretching your soleus. We're going to work between the two of them. So you're going to start with a straight leg, hold this for a few moments, and then you're then going to go into a bent leg. So all you're doing, hips are staying exactly the same as they are. All you're doing is you're just bending the knee and then straightening the knee. And when you straighten, it means you probably will drop down with your heel a little bit more. And then same thing, bend the knee. And when I bend my knee, I really can feel this around here. And then straighten. I'm going to do this a couple more times through. So bend and straighten and last time bend and step yourself down. So that was all on your left. We're now going to swap over and do the same on the right side. So finding yourself in that position where you've got your heel dropping off the bottom, and this again is completely straight, as you can hopefully see. And then from there we're now going to bend. I'm kind of glad that you can't see my face right now, because now you can't see the terrible faces that I'm pulling, because this is really uncomfortable for me. And then straighten. And bend. Oh, it's when it bends. That's the worst bit for me. And straighten. And bend. I'm going to do one more time. And straighten. And bend. Last time. And release. Good job. Okay, so that's it for the calf section. We're now going to move on to a different area. We're going to have a little bit of a look at your hips, because obviously when you're running, you're constantly driving that leg up and then forcing it back down into extension. So you're going into flexion and extension as you're running. So sometimes those hip flexors in particular can get a little bit tight and a little bit pesky. So we're going to try and make them a little bit smoother and looser for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some hip cars. So like we did with the ankle, we're now going to look at the hip joint and do a very similar thing. So the hip joint has a little bit more movement than your ankle in terms of the ranges of movement that it can do, because obviously it's a ball and socket joint, which means that it's got a massive range of movement. It can basically spin around in circles. So you're going to bring yourself into an off all fours position. And what we're looking to do is, again, it's going to be slow and controlled, because that's what we do with car-based movements. And we're going to start with your right leg. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring your right knee up into flexion as far as you can go. Now you're not looking to round your back and bring your knee as close to your chest as you can. That's not what we want. You want to try and still keep that maintain that position in the back, keep it nice and flat, and you're going to drive your knee up towards you into flexion. You're then going to take it out to the side without letting your hips drop. Then we're going to internally rotate, so you can turn your hip in on itself, lift it over to the back. Okay, start the front again. So you're going to flex, lift out to the side, internally rotate, and then extend over. So imagine you're taking it in a circle, ideally, or especially at this end range, you're lifting your leg over something. So again, from here, flexion, out, internally rotate it, and round to the start. Keep that going. We'll do a couple more, and then we're going to change the direction we're moving in. So really slow and controlled, especially that last portion. Okay, so this time we're going to reverse it because also your hip also extends and goes backwards. So this time we're going to extend, externally rotate, swoop it round, internally and down. So back, turn the hip out, swing it round, big circle, and back to the front. Keep this going. Again, you might feel a few clicks and bumps and things along the way. That is just proof that you're really working that full range of movement within that joint capsule. Good, and one more. So extend, externally rotate, and down. Nice. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I will turn and face the other way. The one thing that I forgot to mention is that whilst we're doing this, I kind of want you to think that you've got a drink of some sort on your back and you don't want to spill it. So tea, coffee, wine, beer, whatever it is, water, and you don't want that to spill out from your hands, from your back. So imagine flat on there. We're going to go into your left leg now. So flexion, take it out to the side, internally rotate, and bring it through. Let's keep that going. So internally rotate through. Good. This shouldn't feel easy. You can probably hear there's a slight strain in my voice as I'm doing it because it's not necessarily something that's particularly easy because we're looking at that full range of movement. Okay, let's go back now. So extension, externally rotate, and round. Now make sure when you go into this external rotation, you don't cheat and drop into your weight into your right leg to allow your left leg to come through. Really make sure that you still keep yourself grounded evenly between, and so that you're not sticking your right hip out to the side to compensate for any lack of range that you may have in that joint. We'll do one more. So back, externally rotate, and bring it round and down. Nice. Beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to do some, just looking at my board of things, a kneeling lunge into some rotations on your back. So bring yourself down. You're then going to come onto all fours, and then I would like you to step your left leg forward so that it's in line with your hands. Now this is where, if your knees are feeling a little bit sensitive, that's the word, today, you can put your towel underneath it. Otherwise, from this position here, you're then going to press yourself up into a kneeling position. Hopefully my head is still in shot. And then from here, we're squeezing our glutes like we've done in one of our other episodes, pushing those hips forward so they're still facing forward. We've got that stretch down the front, but we're not compensating through our back like so. Okay, so squeeze through here. Of course, you can lean forward more if you really want to kind of get into those hip flexors a bit more, as long as you're not creating this massive lordotic curve in your lower back, which is going rounded through here. So we're just going to hold this here for a few moments. So you could either take your arms up above your head, you can hold onto your hand in front, just place your hands wherever feels comfortable for you. And then in a moment, we're going to add a little rotation twist element to this too. So last few seconds, feeling that at the front of your right hip flexor. Okay, so now I want you to bring your hands into like a little prayer position. We're now going to rotate to the left-hand side, and I want you to take your right elbow to the side of your left knee. So we're going to rotate, and you're going to hook that elbow by that knee, and then you're going to rotate and look behind you. So your chest is up nice and high, you're not looking down towards the floor, you're lifted, looking up. You've still got that little bit of that stretch going on in those hip flexors, but we're now working through a little bit of a rotation through that back. Just hold that there for a few more moments. You may even get a little bit of a stretch through your glutes slightly as well. And now lowering yourself back down to all fours. You're going to take the left leg back, and we're going to do exactly the same thing, but now on the right side. Left side, but you're going to step your right leg forward. So, right foot comes forward, get yourself into a good position. Again, swap towel over if you need to for those knees. Bring yourself up, glutes engaged, pressing the hips forward. Make sure they're nice and square and we're not twisted. And then just lean into that position for a moment. Again, we're not curving through this back too much. Relatively straight. And then similar, making that prayer position, except this time it's going to be your left elbow going to the outside of your right knee. So we're going to twist and hook and turn to look behind you. So again, you've still got a little bit of a stretch going on through your right hip flexors, but we're also working on, left hip flexors. Remember what leg we're working. But we're also working through that spine and getting a little bit of a rotation going on as well. Just keep holding that there, a few more seconds. And then slowly bring yourself down and coming back to a seated position. Okay, so now we're going to do a tiny little bit on your glutes. So we're going to do what I've basically called this twisty glute pretzel. That is probably not the actual definition of this exercise. However, that's what I'm going with. So here is twisty glute pretzel. I would like you to start by, we'll go right side first. So bring your right leg down to the floor. You're then going to take your left leg and step it over, like so. And then from here, what you're going to do is we're basically going to give your leg a massive cuddle. So bring in the left leg a little bit more if you need to, so it's nice and close to you. Take your right arm, scoop it around the bottom, and hopefully not knock my mic, and then put your left arm on top. And then you're going to drop down to the right hand side. So your right leg is down, your left leg is on top, so stepped over your right leg. We're holding on to the left leg and we're dropping down towards the right hand side. And we're just going to hold this here. And this one we're going to hold for a little bit, so you've got time to loosen off. So if you may first get here and be like, oh, that is all I need, I don't actually need to add, because this might be enough. Just stepping your leg over and bringing it in close to your chest, that could absolutely be your end point, and there's no problem with that, that's fine. If you do, however, have a bit more range and can then start to bring yourself into a bit more of a drop, then feel free to do so. And as the time goes by, you might be able to increase it. So just keep holding it there. And last few seconds now. So I'm just going to drop it down. I'm going to squeeze in a little bit more and drop a little bit deeper, just to really get into those glute fibers. And then slowly bring yourself up, nice and controlled. And now we basically just swap onto the other side. So unleash your legs, or release. quite sure whether unleash is the right word. Left leg down onto the floor, then right leg is gonna step over. Get yourself into a nice comfortable position and then scoot the right leg closer to you. Start with your left arm at the bottom of your kind of squeeze. Then your right arm comes on top. And like I said before, this could be enough for you to get a stretch. Otherwise, you're then gonna drop to feel a little bit more of that stretch and really emphasize it. Now for me, actually, I appear to actually be a bit tighter on this side. So I know that on my other side, I was able to drop down a little bit further, but for me right now, this is actually as far as I need to go, because I can feel that. So wherever you're at, just hold and breathe. Now I can feel like I've got a little bit more room that I can move into. So I'm going to do a little bit more. And last few seconds. And slowly bringing yourself back up to the top. Okay. 3 exercises left, just 3. So we're going to go into a very, probably the most typical yoga pose you have ever heard. A downward dog. Who doesn't know a downward dog? It's not a problem if you don't, because I'm going to demonstrate it. But it is the go-to, isn't it, yoga pose. All right, so for a downward dog, make sure my mic doesn't slip. We are going to start in a kneeling position. From this, you're going to tuck your toes, and then I want you to lift your hips up and bring them up behind you. Now, when you first start in this position, it might be that your heels are way off the floor, and that is absolutely fine. That's not a problem. You can walk your feet further back, which might allow them to drop down a little bit more. We can also play around with this movement by lifting up onto our toes, dropping back down. The main thing that you want to think of when you're doing a downward dog is that you're pushing back through your arms. This back portion through to your arms is nice and straight, so we're not hunched. I don't even know if that looks hunched, but we're not hunched. So you're really pushing back. It's one of those sort of like triangle positions that you're trying to create through your arms and your legs. And then you can also, if it's easier, walk it out. That's just my knees and ankles cracking for you. So you can go from your right to your left, because that might be a little bit easier to drop right down onto your heels. Or if you can, we're now just gonna hopefully hold that there for a few moments. So just breathing, pushing through the hands, and allow your neck to relax. Last few moments, and slowly bring yourself down onto your knees. Great. Okay, then we're going to come onto your back, and we're basically going to give ourselves a little hug. So bring yourself down so you're resting on your back, and I then want you to bring your heels up towards you and hug your knees up into your chest. Now you can either hold a leg individually and bring them slightly out to the side as if you were in a deep squat position, or if you want to keep your legs together and bring them in close to you frontwards, you can do, and grab hold of your arms on top and bring your legs in. I'm going to go with this variation today because that's just what I fancy. Remember with this, if your lower back is starting to hurt, ease out of the position and don't hug it in quite as tight. Equally, if your lower back is really curved, you probably should, for the benefit of your back, bring your legs back down a little bit more. But as long as it's comfortable for you and you don't have a massive curve in that lower spine, you can bring your knees up nice and close. And just breathe into this. We're nearly at the end of today's session. Okay, and then just adding a little bit of a rock from side to side. If that feels good. If that doesn't feel good, don't do it. And then adding a slight rock backwards and forwards. Then hold underneath on your hamstrings, backwards and forwards. See if you can create a little bit of momentum. And then roll yourself up to a seated position. So final one today, we're going to finish off in child's pose, which is a nice relaxing one for us all. So you're going to bring your big toes together, hands out in front, and push yourself back so that your stomach sinks in between your legs, and you're going to bring your head to the floor. And we're just going to hold this here. So we're stretching out through the back, all the way through down to those fingers, and just really unwinding at the end of today's session. And now slowly bringing yourself up, back into that seated position where we started at the beginning. Good stuff. And that is it for another episode of Mobility Fit. Thank you very much for sticking around for this episode that was slightly more tailored towards runners, but like I said, this can correlate with any form of exercise because you'll all use these movements at some point. Next week is going to be, well, the next time that you see me is going to be aimed a little bit more towards lifters. But like I said, similarly for this episode, if you're not a lifter, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that I'm going to tailor a little bit more towards certain positions that you would be in if you are a lifter per se. But other than that, take care, hope you're well, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.